Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our Women's Day event today. A lot of work has gone into this, so we hope that we can give you quality content and information, everything regarding International Women's Day today. So, do we know what the International Women's Day of 2022's theme of the year is? Expecting responses in the chat box. Yay! Yes, correct. It's break the bias. I'm sure our speaker for the day today, Zainab, has plenty to say about this and her own definition of what break the bias means to her. At the end, though, after our discussion and question answer session, I would really love to hear from all of you about what break the bias personally means to you. So Zainab is actually a renowned community leader and public speaker with great expertise in LGBTQIA relations, women's empowerment relations, human rights, inclusion and diversity. So as many of you already might know, she is the lead of diversity and inclusion at Pernod Ricard right now, and before she was working as the director of inclusivity and diversity at KPMG. So enough introductions about her. Let's let her begin, and Zainab, you can take the stage.
Thank you so much, Parvati, for inviting me. In fact, I feel great to come back to this organization and speak to all of you in a different context. My earlier session was more on inclusion and diversity, and today I get an opportunity to talk on breaking the bias. So prior to that, Anu Matthew is actually right. We have two global themes this year. One is, of course, the theme which is done by the International Women's Day organization, which is breaking the bias. And the second theme is gender equality for a better sustainable tomorrow, which is the United Nations theme for International Women's Day. So I think you'll need to split the award, if there is one, between the people who mentioned both the correct entries. So what I'm going to be doing, folks, with you all, is taking you through a short presentation on what has been my journey over the last 4 decades. Yeah, I'm 41 today, so that's 4 decades of my journey. So sharing that with you all, and importantly, having some call out lessons, which I believe is very essential in breaking the bias. So whether you identify male, female, trans, other, the unicorn, it doesn't matter. Bodies don't matter, lived realities matter. So what I'm going to be doing is taking you to a small kaleidoscope of memories right from my childhood to my current day, and distilling some lessons that I believe are important to share, especially on a day like this. So with your permission, I'm going to share my screen and probably end with a small reflective video for you, a very short one. Great. So, I tried to say breaking the bias. And I was trying to say, do I write Zainab Patel, Chief Inclusion Officer at Pernod Ricard, India, or do I mention any other affiliation? And I said, no, I think I'm a catalyst. I think that's what I do best. I work with different communities of people, aggregators, connectors, influencers, and what I do is catalyze people's action. I, by myself, do not lead on anything. I believe in the collective power of people, and that's what I do. So, in order to come where I am, this is what my journey looks like. So, in Indian traditions, we place a lot of emphasis on the importance of a guru in our life. And I wanted to take this first minute or so to acknowledge someone who's very special. She is my guru from the transgender community. A lot of you have probably seen her on television, on the Big Boss series, on Das Kadam, on Khel Pichle Janam Ka. And I think she is a personality in herself. But, when we do this Guru Pranama mantras, specifically, there is one line in that stanza which says that I bow down to my guru who's opened my eyes, which were darkened by the ignorance, by the darkness of ignorance with the correlium of knowledge. And I think when I say this line, it's particularly true because all of us, everyone who's born, who has a brain, who has a heart, we are blinded by some form of ignorance. And it is this guru. It need not be a spiritual master. It could be anyone. It could be your mother. It could be your friend. It could be your colleague. It could be your boss. It could be your sponsor. It could be someone on the street, totally unconnected. It could be a television actor. It could be someone whom you see and get inspired by. And that person who opens that your eyes with the correlium of knowledge is someone who we bow down to. So, you know, the second thing, because it's International Women's Day, I think I also want to take a moment to acknowledge women in our life. And I have the good fortune of having one biological mother and many other mothers of choice who've adopted me, who cherish me, who helped me grow and become who I am today. So the woman on left in red is my biological mother who's smiling down upon me from heaven. And the other woman is someone whom you've probably seen on a Wix ad, which says the Wix touch care about a trans mother adopting a girl and showing us that parenthood, motherhood is not a biological reaction. It is a feeling, it's an emotion, it can be experienced people with other gender. So you don't need to be female, you don't need to be male, you don't need to be trans, you could be a person of any gender and yet experience the emotion of motherhood. Having said that, a lot of people ask me, what is this meaning of this name Zainab? So let me tell you that I was not born with the name Zainab. I had a different name. I was actually born in a Catholic family and I had a Christian name and I have Portuguese ancestry. But during my life, I tried to understand different things. And when I came across this name Zainab, it comes from an Arabic root verb zen, which means beauty. But I am not in that sense beauty from. I did not take it because it means beautiful. I took it because it represents one of the most powerful orators in Islamic history. A lot of us know and perhaps observe Muharram, and some of it, we sometimes ignorantly wish people happy Muharram. It's a day of observation, not a day of celebration. But the reason why we observe Muharram is due to this one powerful lady, Zainab, and she was the sister of Imam Hussein and Hassan, and it was she who stood in the court of a tyrant. She was disrobed, but she stood up and spoke such a beautiful speech. And I said, if I ever want to be someone in life, I will at least emulate her name. And if you look at me, I'm actually like what brother like our PM Modi says, "Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Saath." See, I was born in a Catholic family. I follow Sufism, and that's why you find the picture of the swirling dervish and the name Zainab. But I'm absolutely in love with Krishna. So that is what I would believe is the true amalgamation of faith, religion, and culture in a beautiful country like India. So I belong to a very simple community. This is a community of transgender peoples, more often known as the Hijra community. Everyone in our life has seen them. You've seen them begging at stations. You've seen them at when your car stops somewhere. And this is what you actually dread. You actually dread someone who comes to your window, knocks on it, and you suddenly start feeling uncomfortable. You start feeling scared. And a lot of time people ask me is, why do people get scared? Or what is it that we feel scared about trans people or the Hijra community or the Kinder community, as you know them? I believe my own theory is that it stems from the fact that we don't know about them or we don't understand enough of them. Let's look at the concept of ghost. Do we know what ghosts are? Is the Ramsey brothers, is the Z horror show version of ghost actually true? Do we choose to believe that? But we fear the unknown, so we fear ghost. And we fear dark spaces. So if you're like what I was when I used to live in Delhi, my society had frequent power cuts, and when the power cuts happened, unfortunately, when you were in the lift, you had to get used to an idea of sitting in a 6 by 3 cubicle, stuck for about 20 minutes, and someone pried open the gates and tried to bring you out. You were lucky if you were 80 kilos and below, then it's easy for the watchman to pull you out. If you're anything above that, it's going to be some stress before you get in. So we are scared of unknown spaces. We are scared of dark. And that's why we fear the trans community. So what I want to show you is a picture of my childhood. These are the pictures of my parents, me, and my sisters. So I was born to a set of Catholic parents. This my mother and father when they got married long time back in Mumbai. That's my mother, and that is the baby with the pout is what I was born with. So I was the pouting baby. So I was born through, and so people ask me, is that do you use fillers? I said not until now. Maybe after 50, I would need to use fillers, but I was the baby born with the pout. So throughout my childhood, I must say that I was born in a very, very lower middle class family. I have no shame in saying that. I was born in a small two-room home in Parel. Now, people who are familiar with the geography of Mumbai would know that Parel is a place which had a lot of mills in Mumbai, mills which made clothes, which manufactured material. And there were small two-room tenements which were called chawls, which had absolutely no sense of privacy because there wasn't a concept like privacy there. I was born there. I had two beautiful sisters before me. One of them is 10 years elder to me, and the other is 8 years. So, believe me, my childhood was not about my parents wanting another girl child. I think they had enough with the girl child. So, they were very happy when the doctor one day, when I was born to my parents, told them, good luck, it's a boy after a long time. So, I was born in the body of a boy. Very difficult to imagine after seeing me that when I was probably born 40 years ago, I could have been a boy. But that was the reality. And throughout my childhood, I had a very sheltered existence. Existence because one, I was a premature baby. I had health concerns. So I had a very sheltered existence. My parents protected me. I couldn't play a lot of games and sports. But as I grew up, believe me, a lot of trans people tell you that people will tell you, oh, transgender people can't drive a car, they can't play games, they probably love dolls more than they love cars. So let me tell you that I actually loved cars. I actually love sports. I am 5'11" and I played basketball and badminton up to district level. I broke all the stereotypes. I broke, in fact, my teeth trying to prove myself wrong. So, playing basketball, played football. I had a couple of my teeth knocked out when I was younger. And believe me, when people tell you that it's a choice, no one chooses to be a trans person. First of all, I don't think anyone would make that awful choice of trying to be a trans person. You are what you are, just like you are. You when you are born as a male, you conform to the ideals of being a man or a woman. The same thing as me. We actually swam across the tide of time. We are actually steadfast in our belief that what we are is not what people think we should be, but who we think we were. So that was my story growing up. My childhood was pretty traumatic. I went to a Catholic institution. It was an all boys school. Growing up was particularly painful. So although I was a bright kid, I never stood first in my entire life, but I stood somewhere between the fifth and the eighth rank. And I think that was a great personal achievement for me, that I was a bright student growing up, never missed grades, never missed classes, had fun going to school, never cried a day while going to school, except for this one occasion or the series of occasions that followed it, where people started targeting me due to my effeminate behavior. So imagine a young child who is targeted every day in school. So my home from the school was about 250 meters away from the school where I lived. And my classmates used to tease me and call me all sorts of names right from the school gate till my building gate. And that continued for such a long time that I actually started dreading going to school. My grades started dropping. And I actually started experimenting with suicidal tendencies. Yes, the suicidal tendencies come when you are in school. Yes, they do. There is no age for coming in. Unfortunately, a lot of us Indians believe that until suicide or mental depression is played to a Bollywood suicidal track, we don't sit up and take cognizance of it. So I want to tell you that if you have children, if you are the guardian if of someone, if you have friends or any person connected with you, and you are able to see signs of depression, see signs of distraction, please offer unconditional support. because as parents, as guardians, the least that we could do is offer unconditional support to your children, to your ward, to people whom you're connected with, because that really will shape the future of that person. So I actually, between my 8th standard and the 10th standard, I started acting on my suicidal tendencies. So for me, it was a really long dark road ahead. And believe me, in a country where buying sleeping pills is still difficult, getting access to other suicidal methods was actually easy. You could go and buy in a set of heart pacemaker drugs, which are more toxic in nature and which did not require prescription. I actually experimented with suicide 9 times. Finally, one Christmas night, Eve night, I actually consumed poison. The poison was pumped out of my stomach, but it affected my brain. It affected the peripheral nerves in my body. For 6 months, I was in physiotherapy. I couldn't see beyond 6 feet. I couldn't grasp a pen. I couldn't have a knee jerk reaction. I lost reactions to my body. I was like, I was not a vegetable. I could see, I could feel, but I couldn't act on it. I lost 2 years of education. So actually, because if I was a premature baby and it was a Catholic institution, I was a year and a half early in school. And I lost that first mover advantage, and I lost 2 years of education because who would sit and write exams for me? And this was that terrible year in the history of education where they introduced trigonometry in standard 9th and 10th. So people who were in the batch of 96, 97 will remember this year as a terrible year because the syllabus changed to include trigonometry, and there were extra classes. So there was no question of giving merit or by, passing a person if they were not, didn't have those skills. But this one particular day on the 2nd of January, after having gone through what I did, and I was sitting on the hospital bed and I looked out of the window. And I don't know if how many of you have seen the KEM hospital in Mumbai. There is a new building and there is an old building. The old building is it's full of big stones. It's an old structure, and you could see the sunlight filtering in. And at that point, I say that no, perhaps I survived for a reason. I am meant for something different. I'm meant for something better, and I will use this occasion only to better myself. And that's how the cookie did not crumble. And for me, it meant building on myself from that point of time. So this is my actual name. I was born with the name Ernest Narona. And I so pardon the spelling. People were trying to understand what was the meaning of that. Name. So I actually excelled in communication. I won the Best Students Award. I practically excelled in college till I came to degree college, and the activism bug bit me. And what happened then is people said we cannot have people like these sitting with children of ours. They'll morally, ethically corrupt them, and I don't know what they will make out of them. But they said, we know. So I dropped out of college not once but twice. I moved cities. I joined the Hijra community. I begged on the streets, survived for 25 paise, because that was your value. People used to give you 25 paise. The Hindi equivalent of it is char ana. Nobody even understands the meaning of what char ana means. It means 4 annas. That was our value to be given for. Then someone prompted me, go ahead, study. And I said, what will a Hijra do with an MBA degree? And they said, thank me later on. And this letter, which I can't I couldn't show, was a letter written by my Bachelor of Management Studies course coordinator to my parents, saying that your son at that point of time, because I was still their son, has potential of becoming like a child prodigy of Peter Drucker. And I thought, oh my God, Peter Drucker, he made me the prodigy of Peter Drucker, because he used to teach management and organizational development and said, be patient, give him the opportunity and study. And that's when my parents called me back home. I grew i grew as a person. I accepted myself as a woman. I met the person of my dreams. So when you see the name Zainab J Patel, the J Patel comes from the person who I married, Javed Patel. So both of us are Indian. We went to South Africa. We got married on my birthday. So my husband doesn't have to remember 2 dates. He just has to remember one date and give me one present. And life moved on. So while India was still criminalizing homosexuality, there we were in South Africa, in Cape Town, facing the ocean, exchanging rings, celebrating our life, and ringing in a new chapter of our. And that's when my journey and transition happened. So the slimmer version that you see of me is about 5 years old, but again, this is with my trans mother, Gauri Sawant. And just to show you, my transition also started changing my mental health. It started changing my perspective about how I see things. This is the day when we changed history in the Supreme Court. I went to the Supreme Court along with two other trans activists trying to find out where our rights were. We were tired of promises and promises by politicians. We said, if you want to be the change, be the change. So we embodied Mahatma Gandhi's words. And then this is my family of choice. This is me with my guru. To my left is one of the first masters in social work students. She's a transgender woman called Shreya. And to the other side is another daughter of mine who is India's first LIC trans employee. So I'm trying to say that we are a family of first people. I was one of the first UN diplomats who was trans, and we had an exemplary family. And I believe that when biological families live, throw us out, when we live as destitute, we get this amazing opportunities to convert it and make families of choice. Today, it feels great that when you search yourself, you get 9,29,000 entries featuring you, and it feels great. But at what cost did it come? And I will tell you this in distilling it in 5 lessons for you, saying that your life is now. So whether you identify as male, female, trans, live also at this moment. I'm not saying live for the moment, but live this moment. If there is anything that COVID has taught you, is please live for the moment as well. You need to prioritize yourself. You need to also look at your inner health, your inner well-being, your safety, your security, and your excellence. Fear is an illusion mostly. So I remember this one particular incident when I met with a terrible accident in Bangkok in 2017. I was a diplomat living in Bangkok, and I had a terrible bike accident. Most of my face had to be reconstructed. I have a scar running left to right on my forehead, my nose, my teeth, my chin. I had a glass shard in my throat. I had to go under therapy, and that taught me again that I started fearing bike rides. And I said, fear is an illusion. Mostly, it's not that it's not based on something, but you have to tackle your fear, whether it is fearing to ask for that promotion, it is fearing to negotiating for that project space, whether it is fearing to be heard, whether, it is fear to be sounding aggressive. I think you need to kind of get rid of it, because if you don't act on it, it's like saying this: the pain of being in the bud is much more than the pain of flowering into something beautiful. It is going to challenge you, it is going to shake your inner core out. And for that, failure is good. It is good to fail, it is good to fall down, it is good to meet a roadblock, it is good to stumble, because when you do that, you realize who your allies are, who your sponsors are, and what you need to do for self empowerment. Don't be like this actor from Spider-Man waiting for Spider-Man to come and rescue her, or Superman to come and rescue. If you are going to be your hero, be like what Mariah Carey says: there's a hero within you. Act on that. Act on that, because by taking risk, it will expand you. Believe me, when the recession hit 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when Manmohan Singh was in the government, what did he do? He took the risk of making leaders accountable for their action. I believe that each one of us has to take the risk to be accountable. Take risk today so that tomorrow you do not regret the opportunity, the lost opportunity of not taking that risk. And the last thing is that don't let anyone label you. In an age where everyone is certifying you to be a nationalist, certifying you to be a great career professional, certifying you to be a diversity candidate, you define meaning for yourself. It really doesn't matter what people think of you. If I had to think what people think of me, I would have been probably been clapping and begging on the streets till now. I would not be able to sit and take a 5-figure salary home, or to have a partner today, or to decide what I want to eat, what I want to wear, how I want to look like, and how I want to communicate. And I wouldn't probably be in the midst of all of you today talking about my story. So with that, I'm going to say that the power to be different lies within all of you. But I am going to share you a nice feel good video of what we did at International Women's Day with with Radio City, and it just kind of tells you that there are different ways to celebrate womenhood, including the fact that there are so many different types of women differentiated by color, by body, by attitude, and by gender as well. So take a minute, folks, look at this video, and we'll come back to a couple of questions later.
सबसे भारी No position in society पड़ती है सबसे गाली but who cares? क्योंकि हम भी नारी Attitude सबसे भारी इतना सहकर भी हम स्माइल करें, सबसे खुलकर प्यार करें, कहते हैं सब लोग हमें कुछ भी बोलो, अरे तू मिसफिट है रे, चल हट, जात पात जेंडर वेंडर ब्लैक और वाइट ही डोंट कंसीडर, ये भूसाते दिमाग के अंदर बन जा इंसान फ्रॉम टू बंदर, क्योंकि हम भी नारी, एटीट्यूड सबसे भारी, बोर्ड एग्जाम के फॉर्म में हमको जगह दे दी रे, ऑस्कर में लेडी गागा हमको पूछती है, कॉल सेंटर में जगह मिली, कॉलेज ने भी तालीम दी, ब्यूटी पैजेंट भी है, जीते फिर भी तेरे हैं दिल से हारे, क्यों थोड़ी जगह तो मिल सकती है ना, क्योंकि हम भी नारी, एटीट्यूड सबसे भारी, हम भी हैं नारी, एटीट्यूड सबसे भारी, एटीट्यूड सबसे भारी.
So thank you. This was a short video for all the misfits, for all the people who conform to what other people think they were. I think this is a wake-up call for all of us to remember that celebrating International Women's Day is not limited to the 8th of March and not limited to one gender. It's across the gender spectrum. And a very important call to action message is that believe in yourself. The possibilities are endless if you act upon it. So over to Parvati, please.
Oh, I'm on mute. Okay. Am I audible now? Alrighty. Thank you so much, Zainab, for that wonderful video. It was so inspiring, honestly. Did you guys do the music direction by yourself? And did you write the lyrics by yourself, or was it?
We co-created it.
That's amazing. It's amazing. So thank you so much for that. It was, in fact, very inspirational. And your talk was also very informational on what it means to be a woman. Not necessarily based on your body, but what goes on in the mind, right? Gender identity wise, I would say. So I have a few questions for you. Would you have time to take those?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, wonderful. All right. So I guess the first question that I'd want to ask is, what does break the bias mean to you?
I think, Parvati, when you're talking about break the bias, there are many biases that we have internally. So anyone who has a brain has a bias. So it's as simple as saying that biases help us decide what we want to eat, what we want to wear. So it's not bad having a bias. It's choosing to act on certain biases on important components, like whom we decide to work with. So we have an affinity bias. All of us have affinity biases. We prefer to people who look like us, walk like us, talk like us. We do this subconsciously because that's how we evolved. So for me, when it comes to breaking the bias, it means providing opportunities for all, irrespective of what your personal viewpoint may be about a person, which could be clouded because of the way we are brought up, our lived realities and our association. Like today, if okay, let me tell you a personal example. I used to work with the United Nations, a place which talked about and championed for gender equality always. And our conversation starters were basically pleasant hi hellos, but ended up asking which area you come from. And the area segregation kind of automatically filtered out people whom you wanted to meet with, interact with, and be friends with, rather than looking at it. So the moment you say a location in South Delhi, okay, then you say, okay, that's a happening crowd. If you say North Delhi, it'll filter it out. And I'm saying this with full responsibility of being a diplomat. I've seen some of the worst racist attacks on me, saying that people like you who come from third world countries should work on their English. So, or if we don't give jobs to people like you, who will? And I think when you come to these conclusions, based on people's backgrounds, based on people's body types, based on your perceptions, you will always continue to perpetrate a bias. So all of us have biases. We need time to sit back, think, and evaluate. And I think the most simplest way is to take an implicit association test. It will teach you. I thought I was a great advocate for person with disabilities till I took an implicit association test and said that, oh my God, I'm doing everything wrong. I perhaps need to go back to the writing board. So whether you are sympathetic, you are empathetic, it's great to be an ally, but remember, ally is called to be in action, and that is about challenging and breaking some of your biases. So I feel biases are all prevalent, all of us have it, but we need to work on it to change the situation.
Alrighty. So apart from the North Delhi, South Delhi example, do you have any personal stories or experiences from your experience with prejudice and biases experienced by you?
Okay, so generally around International Women's Day, we all start talking about the glass ceiling for women, right? And we absolutely revel in that. I mean, we think that talking about the glass ceiling is the only thing that will change women's reality. I must tell you this from a personal example. So I worked in the space of gender equality, working with politicians, with the government, with the judiciary, with private sector now. Believe me, until the World War, it was perfectly normal, natural, and part of the law for women not to work. It's only when the men started getting killed in the World War that people realized we need someone to keep the production on in factories, and that's where women were started getting herded towards that. I worked with a professional services organization, I don't want to name them, and it's seen as a progressive firm today. But interestingly, when we look at a country like America, and right up to 15 years ago, you couldn't wear a pantsuit to office, you had to wear a skirt. And she's a senior partner in that organization, and she told me that as a CA, I couldn't wear a pant and a coat to office because the unsaid rules of the organization did not permit me, and I had to dress for being a woman. So I think these are opportunities that we kind of look at through our life. Then came to my occasion as a trans person. I think for me, I didn't have a glass ceiling. I only had concrete ceilings. So coming from a chawl, I only had a concrete ceiling. I did not have a house where I could look on top and say, okay, here's my glass ceiling. And practically right through my education or my dropping out of the education or struggling to continue, or for that matter, to prove myself on every given job, I think I carved a name for myself by trying to be an advocate on gender equality and in the DNI space. But believe me, I am always being typecast as an LGBTIQ person, not as a person who can promote gender equality. Because they think that, oh, she's a fantastic transgender woman and let her be that. Why do we need to invite her to talk about gender equality or talk about women's issue? Because trans women are great, but not women. And I think these are some personal experiences about me trying to break the ice to share the platform, even by trying to say that gender equality doesn't mean that you need to be a woman. You need someone who's a catalyst. And my experiences, lived realities as a trans woman doesn't kind of derail your own gender journey. So I think I am constantly kind of breaking the bias or breaking the stereotype around determining who I am or what people think I should be doing.
All right, so can I ask you a follow-up question on that?
Yes, please.
It was quite confusing for me at the last bit because you said being a transgender woman is fine until it comes to actual woman things. But I'm thinking being transgender means that you have you
Yeah.
like
So I get the draft of the question, but let me tell you that.
Right?
Yes. So I'll tell you what, it's a nice thought and it's probably in the right direction. But Parvati, what happens is that when you work with different kinds of people, you realize that you are typecasted. and that typecast being typecast means that you can only assume one identity. You can't assume multiple identities. So Zainab can perhaps talk best as a trans activist or an LGBT inclusion activist. But I think when it comes to talking about gender equality at the workplace, what does she have to contribute about it? She probably doesn't understand the gendered issue. She's still a very privileged person. And I think there are these kind of bifurcations that come in mind. And I think these are applicable to just about everyone around us. So if you are, say, someone who talks about intersectionality, they will say that why would Parvati want to talk about intersectionality? Let her talk about her issues from a gender journey perspective. So I think we are so styloed in our approach, saying that they will not look at the wealth or the intelligence that I bring in, but they will automatically typecast me into the body that I am. So for me, breaking that bias is an everyday thing that, okay, I need to talk about X, Y, and Z issues, and I can do so even if I am a transgender woman. I don't need certification from anyone to tell me that you are not qualified or not best posed for this.
Do you think part of this can be solved? Well, not completely solved, but part, a little bit can be done during the employment process if they ask you if you're a male or a female or others. If we just eliminate that question, would that be good? Would that be lead to something positive?
That's a very simplistic view about trying to eliminate. From the time we are born, for the time mankind has evolved, they've already tried to put people in boxes. What however you can do is by telling people express themselves better. We may not be able to obviate everything, but we need to make specific inroads, because even if you do make the inroads into your organization and try to say that let's not focus on the gender or the pronouns, let's focus on the individuals, the moment you step out of that office closet of yours, you walk into a client office, you walk into an institution, you walk into a government building, you go out into a public space, you are again gender stereotyped and made into what you are supposed to be, because the other people think of you in that lens.
Okay, that makes sense. So what do you think are some ways that we can become more aware and break our own biases, apart from that assessment that we can take?
See, the first thing is that you need to call out your privilege. All of us are very privileged people. The fact is that we are sitting on International Women's Day to the comfort of our homes and offices and listening to a transgender person speaking in English and perhaps in an articulate manner itself calls out reeks of privilege. Today, as a trans woman, I am probably better than 99.99% of the trans women on the streets, who may perhaps not look at me and associate because I am an antithesis to what they are. Look at the imagery I presented on screen. Someone wearing gaudy makeup, someone wearing loud, who's loud, who stands out in public, versus me who will try to blend in public. So the fact is that we have to call out, understand our privilege, whether it's privilege due to education, privilege due to being able to speak a particular language, ability to walk into the doors of any building unchecked or unfettered, is all big time privilege. And it all determines how you use this privilege to become a better ally. So whether you actually are humble enough to understand that whenever you sign up as an ally on gender, on ability, on orientation, it's calling out your privilege, wanting to listen to the other person's story and not making it about yourself. It is about the other person's journey. So I think these three are very important part: understanding your privilege, calling it out with all humility, understanding that you have biases and willing to work on it. And the third part is that accepting it, that it is not your journey. It's about understanding another person's journey and you being part of the story, not the narrator yourself.
Right. Thank you for that. So what do you think would take for us to have a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive workspace?
The fact that you continue to challenge what you do and how you do and where you would source talent for. A lot of us are super obsessed by going into tier one cities and A universities and taking our campus placement to these universities because we feel we can reap the best talent. If you truly believe in an organization, that can be diverse and inclusive, you have to bring in equity. Equity is not a new concept. Believe me, when people start talking about equity, we've been practicing equity in many ways. It's just that we do not call it out because we feel scared to call out equity, because all of us do realize that when we start calling out equity, we might actually have to talk about going beyond the meritocracy argument. And believe me, if Parvati, you and I were on a job together, we were interviewing for a job together, and I'm just saying with the assumption that you have a foreign degree and I don't, but both of us similarly, we have a post-grad degree, we have 10 years of experience, and we were called, would the recruiter, would the recruitment panel be actually be able to say, okay, here are two women, great, at least on the diversity front, that we've ticked one box, their competencies are similar, they're both great candidates, but will I be able to prioritize a trans woman because of her lived realities, because of her struggles, and say, okay, let's pull this candidate in because we believe it, for our organization to be truly diverse and truly inclusive, we need to get a variety of voices and realities of people. Because when you bring in these kind of people, they not only bring in diversity on paper, stats, and from the ESG framework perspective, but they actually bring in a different culture to the organization. It gives a different assimilation feel by the organization. So that is the question one needs to ask ourselves. Are we ready to do that? Are we ready in 5 years to do that? Are we ready in 3 years to do that? Or do we say that we are a meritocracy based organizations, our recruitment and talent attraction happens by merit? Because if you belong to the last group, then I believe we need to go back to the drawing board, re-examine our priorities, and perhaps not list inclusion and diversity as one of our priority areas to work with.
So what do you think, what does diversity and inclusion at work really mean, as opposed to what is perceived of it in reality and practiced as of now? So you said go beyond meritocracy, or did you say that we have to stay within meritocracy and then ignore the diversity part of the equation?
No. So one is basically going beyond the description and the contours of meritocracy, because not all of your inclusivity will border on meritocracy.
Right.
One has to take the step beyond that as well. So I think one thing that we all need to factor is that when we're talking about a diverse and inclusive climate, if I were to have any other colleague, would I be open to accepting them? Would I be open to understanding their viewpoint in an unbiased manner? That would mean that it could sometimes conflict with my socio-cultural religious belief, but at the same time, it upholds the organization value of non-discrimination, of equity, of being together. And I think this is a fundamental question that one needs to ask. And this is going beyond the usual, pillars of gender or a person with disability or an LGBT. It also cuts across race, economic status, skin color, regionality, all of these. So I think if you can answer any of these questions, what would it take for another colleague of another region for me to feel welcome, to thrive, to do well within this organization? And I, as a colleague, as a co-creator, I'm going to put in these set of intervention, starting with myself.
Okay. All right.
So I think these are questions you need to, it's not a performance manager, it's not a shop floor worker, it's not the MD CEO of the company. It is each and every person who belongs to the workforce. If you can ask yourself that question, you will get the answers yourself.
What can I do to make myself comfortable, to adjust, or
no, I think one is that asking yourself that, am I comfortable? And if I am comfortable, what am I doing for every other person to feel comfortable, welcomed, and to thrive within the organization? This is a question that each one of us needs to ask, specifically in the context of International Women's Day when we're talking about breaking the bias.
Okay, got it. So to attract more female talent into companies, what are the kind of policies you think we should be having as corporate? for a growing corporate?
So there was this very interesting study done by Community Business about women in Southeast Asia, um, who looked actually at the um, diversity policies and recruitment practices within the organization for women. I think when women come into the organization, they would like to see a career pathway. I think that is very important, extremely critical for looking at success, for looking at growth of women in the organization. If I, as an associate, can come in into an organization and realize my journey to partnership within the firm is going to look like this over the next 15 years, I think you've already laid it out. So for anyone who's able to look at a career pathway within the organization, great. So whatever enablers you need to do, whether you need to bring a mentorship program, you need to bring in a learning program, you need to bring in networking opportunities, and importantly, sponsorship opportunities, great, put that in. There are many avenues available for women policies, women-centric policies like caregiving, work from home, flexibilities. I think a lot of it has been talked about in different forums, but looking at flexibility is the key, especially for people who have come back on a returnship journey.
So like, you mean taking a break maybe for a child, taking care of the family?
Well, I would not want to stigmatize people who cannot have children. I'm saying anyone who's taken a break due to a life event. It could be a bereavement in the family. It could be an event like a marriage or childbirth, or just for the fact that I want to take an educational break and come back, or for the fact that situation around me is not conclusive me to continue working, I'm taking a break. So anyone who's taken a career break and coming back, flexibility is the key. Ring fencing some of the performance assessment and ranking for them over the next 18 months is actually critical for them to survive within the organization.
Okay, thank you so much. I would welcome questions that we have right now from the audience. Does any one of you have a question? Looking at the chat box all. Okay. I guess we have a lot to think about, so all of our team is thinking about that. All right, so Zainab, can I take over the presentation now?
Please do.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. It's trivia time. Okay, so first question. Who is considered the first computer programmer in this world? Get out those chat boxes, start typing. Yay! Congrats, Jay. Good answer. That's the right answer. This is Lady Lovelace. Oh, I don't know. Take this off. Okay, so she wrote the world's first machine algorithm for an early computing machine that existed only on paper. So this was not made into an actual computer. But of course, someone had to be the one. But Lovelace was a woman, and this was in the 1840s. Think about that. Well, Lovelace was a brilliant mathematician, and thanks in part to her opportunity she was afforded that were denied to most women of that time. Next question. She developed the first compiler for an electronic computer known as AO. She also popularized the term debugging. Who is this? She was also called, she was also in the Navy, and she was also called Amazing Grace. Clues. Yes, Gopi. The correct answer is, in fact, Grace Hopper. Here she is. So after graduating from Yale, Grace wanted to join the US Naval Reserve, And in 1943, she was accepted and assigned to the Bureau of Ship Computation project at Harvard University. There she worked on the first large-scale automatic calculator in the US, and her team came up with new ways to interact with computer data. Grace believed that data should be similar to human language, and later she helped develop a computer language called COBOL, which uses English words. Next question. In September 2018, cover story, Fast Company said that she is the only Black queer woman to have ever built a venture capital firm from scratch. Who is she? This was pretty big news at that time. She was also homeless, I feel, and it was very rare for somebody like that, from that sort of background, Black, homeless, queer, all of this combination to have come together and opened a firm in the Silicon Valley. Do we know? See, oh my goodness, you guys are so, like, you guys know everything. Oh, Jay, sorry, Jay, it's not Pamela Culpepper, it's actually Arlen Hamilton. Here she is. So if you look at the cover, it says Arlen Hamilton has muscled her way into the boys club. Silicon Valley will never be the same. I would be very proud if my face was in this and somebody wrote this about me. So anyway, she is the founder and managing partner of the venture capital firm Backstage Capital. Arlen came into the VC world in a very unique way. She started Backstage without formal education or experience in investing, and her firm focuses on funding startups run by people of color, women, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Backstage has done 160 deals so far with investments in everything, starting from online beauty retailers to satellite internet companies. I think, if I remember correctly, they had dispensed $150 million by the year 2019, so 1 year after their start. Oh. Can you identify this person? The lady always smiling and with sunglasses on her hair. It's pretty cool. Yes, Ifra. This is, in fact, Gita Kanan. So Gita Kanan is an entrepreneurial leader and a pioneer in the women for the women in IT movement in India, with over 30 years of global experience spanning business, technology, and people. She credits much of her progress to learning, opportunities, and a supportive environment, and is compelled to make this a norm for all women in tech. I feel like this is already happening at Reflections as well. With 29 years of experience in the IT industry, she's a strong advocate for gender diversity and women entrepreneurship in India. All right, now we have reflectors who are creating her story in Reflections. These are dedicated to women who have gone the extra mile and have really worked hard to make sure that they follow their own dreams while also doing their job, AM to PM job. So let's see.
I'm Vidya and I work as business analyst at Reflections. I am also a classical dancer. Dance is my passion. Dance is my breath, the language of my soul, and the fire that ignites my emotions. My true purpose of existence is dance, and a dance to lose and find myself all at the same time. I dance to attain the state of trance in connect with the Almighty. I have always had the dream to achieve big in dance. This year, my dream came true with one of my greatest achievements as a dancer. It was with great excitement that I took part in the Guinness event in classical dance, along with 698 other dancers from all over the globe. It was a lifetime opportunity for me to present my dance before the Guinness judging panel, which had the most acclaimed dancers from all over the world. And by the Almighty's grace, my attempt was successful. It was the biggest moment in my life when I received the Guinness World Record in my hand. I live, breathe, and experience the bliss in my dance every moment in my life. Today, I am proud of being born as a woman and celebrate the joy of womanhood. We are one together.
Hi, I'm Soumya, and I'm part of Reflections for almost 2 years, and I work here as ML engineer. So some things which made me proud of myself are first is a trip which I went to Himachal with my girls gang in the beginning of this year. There were many situations that was challenging, but nothing stopped us. Second, when my family went through an unexpected situation in the beginning of last year, I took the charge and overcome all those. I didn't give up on myself, and I didn't let them also. So today, when I see them with full happiness on their face, it makes me believe that everything is possible if you are ready to do it. Third, I took new roles and responsibilities in my career this year, but most importantly, I got a chance to learn new things. I started being more open to present my opinions and say no when I don't agree, and finally it gave an output that satisfied myself.
I'm Anjali and I work as a senior software engineer at Reflections. This year, I accomplished one of my biggest dreams. I traveled to Manali. The traditional view of our society is that girls cannot travel alone. Let's break that. Come ladies, don't let be your dreams be dream.
Now it's time for a message from our CEO. The stage is yours, Deepa.
Thank you, Parvati. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So I know Women's Day is tomorrow, but a happy Women's Day to all of us here in Reflections. First of all, let me start with a statistic, right? Can anyone guess what is our gender ratio? Anyone other than in HR? What percentage of women do we have in the workforce?
45?
40.
Any other guesses? Okay, so I think both of you may be, in the ballpark. We are between 40 and 45. The number is changing every day because we have new joinees. But I think that's a great statistic for any company. Close to 50%, right, between men and women. That's a great indication that, there is great diversity and inclusion in our company, at least gender-wise. We're not always thinking about gender. We are always thinking about what people bring to the table, right? So I would start with that statistic, which is great, a pat on the back for all of us. It's not because we kept talking about it, it's just the culture of the organization, right, which is very encouraging. So, and in addition to that, today, it's not just about women, right? We're talking about break the bias. There are so many biases, as Zainab said, whether we know or don't know. There is conscious bias, there is unconscious bias, all kinds of bias that exist in our minds. I think overall, we are able to work with people of other geographies. We have people from all over India, and we don't ask anyone, where are you from, when we are performing our day-to-day work, right? I think our policies are very flexible in order to accommodate anyone from any part of the world. I think even the government policies, all of these things have evolved today to accept people of all kinds. But I think the problem is still with the mindsets, at least some of us, maybe all of us, right? It's different points in time, those mindsets probably come out and, they come into action. I think we all have to be wary of those mindsets, right? There may be occasions, in pockets, though we say we are 40% women, if you go around and ask women, there may be instances where, they missed an opportunity. It's not about doing any favors for women or, any favors for anyone from any part of this world, right? Or any favors for disabled. See, but you're talking about diversity, not just, about gender. It's not about doing favors for people. You don't have to do undue favors to anyone, right? No one has ever done undue favors to me. It's my hard work, right? That's a story all of us want to tell. But it is about not denying opportunities to people because, they are from a gender. I've heard people in reflections in the past, not in the recent past, but at least in the long past, I've heard people say, okay, this girl, she just got married. Will she go on maternity leave in 10 months, right? Not just in reflections, it happens, right? This is unconscious bias, right? As we choose who to work with, right? So these are things, there are biological differences, there are, natural things that happen to all of us. See, look at the scenario where a woman has to, leave home early because she has to take care of her young children, right? It is talked about a lot, right? Most of the time. Whereas, I know that we have men colleagues who have to take care of their family and they use flexible working hours. It's never talked about, right? So these are some unconscious biases, however much we claim we have come forward and attained gender diversity and all other kinds of diversity, I still think we are not, when I say we, I'm not only meaning reflections, all of us in the world, but, what we can do in our control is what we can do within reflection. So I urge all of you to come forward. Whenever you see anyone making any conscious or unconscious bias, please step forward and correct it. If there are any policy changes that we as an organization must make, please come forward and talk to me or Usha or any of us. Right, and we have to make those policy changes because we want to bring in all kinds of people into reflections, right, who can bring something into reflections, right? Because we are a growing company, there is a lot of talent that we need. We encourage all those people to come in, but it's very important that we accept them. And I want to go back to one of my personal experiences in my past company, right? We were making huge efforts to bring people with disabilities into the organization, not because we wanted to do them any favors, but these are people who are denied opportunities, right? You go into a college, you find 10 freshers, right? All of them are good, but you can take only 8 because that's all you need, right? There's an unconscious bias by which you may deny opportunity to a disabled person and take another 8, right? So we wanted to run some special campaigns for disabled and bring people of that category. There were people with physical disabilities, people who couldn't speak, people who couldn't hear. We didn't go to the extent of taking people who couldn't see, because even with these 3 categories, we found that these people had struggled through their lives. They had completed either BTech or BSc in computer science and all, with all these disabilities, and they come from very rural backgrounds. If they were from rich backgrounds, their parents would have probably taken care of some of those disabilities at least, right? At least 50%, but they didn't have that opportunity. So they came forward. So they are extremely confident people who think they can do whatever we ask them to. But when they came into the organization, it is the acceptance of that crowd that was the most difficult thing. It took about a year, and it took about a few people to come forward and be volunteers and set examples and show that having diverse teams can really be successful. It took a long time for them to be accepted. So breaking the bias is about not denying opportunities. If you bring diversity into your teams, you're surely going to see success, right? So there is a lot we all have to do within the company, and maybe together we can do things outside the company to bring about this change, this mindset change. So please join me in that journey, and let's do a lot of things together. That's all, Bhagwati. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Vidya, do you want to go on with the vote of thanks?
Yes, Parvati, thank you. A very good afternoon to our respected leaders and my dear fellow reflectors. Today on this occasion, when we celebrate the International Women's Day, it's my great privilege to have this opportunity to propose a vote of thanks. I, on behalf of the entire Reflections family, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to the speakers for gracing today's event and sharing with us their findings and opinions. A big thank you to Zainab Patel for her inspiring speech on her life and journey. Her mantra of relevance, responsibility, attitude towards life, responsiveness, along with a strict personal compass, has been an eye-opener for all of us. I hope that all our wonderful women reflectors also build up that confidence so as to push themselves to achieve greater things in life. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for our dear CEO Deepa for her inspiring speech. The can-do attitude and the ability to define success in our own terms has been the learnings from your inspiring speech, Deepa. I also believe that our dear women reflectors would recognize their own capabilities and their talents and skills and be successful in their own lives. We are all inspired by your great words, Deepa. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to place on record the hard work put in by all those reflectors to make this event a great success. An event like this cannot happen overnight. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated colleagues for Reflections. I also extend my heartfelt gratitude to our colleagues from the media team as well. I cannot thank everyone enough for their involvement and their willingness to take on the completion of tasks beyond their comfort zones. Thanks to each and every one of you who are present here for being with us this day. It has been a great pleasure. Thank you very much once again.
All right. Thank you, Vidya. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.